Well, hello, and thank you so much for joining us for our webinar, Beyond Academics, How Athletics Shape a School's Value Proposition. I am thrilled to welcome Jonathan J.P. Pollard, who is the Associate Head of School and Varsity Baseball Head Coach at Austin Prep in Reading, Massachusetts. My name is Suzanne Podhurst. I am the Head of Content Strategy here at Niche, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. And before I turn it over to you, JP, to introduce yourself, I'll just run through a couple of quick housekeeping notes. First of all, I'm about to launch a poll uh, just to ask folks about the nature of your roles. Please let us know, and then we can tailor the discussion as we go. Um, Please also introduce yourselves in the chat. I see folks are doing that already. So glad to have you here, and look forward to what promises to be a very exciting conversation. Also, if you have questions, add them to the Q&A, and we will get to those in the latter portion of the webinar. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Jonathan Pollard. Hi, JP. Welcome. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about Austin Prep and your role there.
Thank you, Suzanne. First of all, I'd like to thank you and Niche for having me on today. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you. And I would also like to start by thanking everyone in attendance. I know it is a very busy time of year in schools, so for you to carve out some time to be with us today and hear my perspective on athletics and how they can be a value proposition to your school is greatly appreciated. For a little bit of context in terms of where my conversation and how I have come to my opinions on athletics and the value proposition it can be in schools, I currently serve at Austin Prep. We are a day school in Massachusetts, and we are a Catholic co-ed educational serving students between grades 6 through 12. We're roughly 15 minutes outside of Boston, and again, we are a day school with commuters coming from around 50 communities surrounding our campus. As for me personally, as you'll see on the slide, my career path at Austin begins with student, but however, I think it would be more prudent to start with son. And why I say that is much of what has shaped my opinion on education and service of children and students is my mother. And I grew up in a house where my mother worked for Department of Children and Families, and she dedicated her entire professional life in service to young men and women and ensuring they have the best lives possible. So that was kind of like a subliminal influence throughout my life, which led to a life serving children through education and athletics. However, here at Austin Prep, the story did in fact begin as a student. I graduated here from the late 90s, and upon my graduation, I went to college where I was a college athlete. At the completion of my athletic career, I moved into the athletic space and was enjoying a life in athletics. And a new head of school was named here at Austin Prep, and he reached out, seeing if I would have any interest in returning to school based on some of the things I had accomplished outside of campus in athletics. He felt that there was some transferable skills there in terms of what I could bring back to a campus that I loved so much. So I did, in fact, return 12 years ago to Austin Prep. In my first 5 years at Austin Prep, I served in the capacity of Director of Athletics. Tremendously rewarding experience, very full circle for me going from student athlete to now Director of Athletics, which also gave me an opportunity to kind of influence the future of athletics at Austin Prep and make it more of an experience that maybe I wish I had had myself. At the completion of my first 5 years, I was actually promoted to assistant head of school, where I spent 3 to 4 years in that space. And then I was elevated to my current position, which is associate head of school. With that, I think that though the titles are important to kind of see the trajectory of my career here, I think it's more important to see the timeline of departments that I have overseen and continue to oversee to this day. So obviously, upon my return, I was overseeing athletics as Director of Athletics. We saw that many of our students, over 80% of our students, come here as student athletes. We saw that there was a complementary nature between athletics and admissions. So the head of school promoted me to assistant head of school, overseeing athletics and admissions. In today's world, with social media and so many outside organizations covering athletics and our students, our head of school recognized an opportunity for me to move into the communication space. So I began to oversee now athletics, admissions, and communications. We're very blessed at Austin Prep that many of our student athletes move on to play at the collegiate level. So I served almost as a college counselor to a degree in servicing our student athletes in chasing down their collegiate dreams. There was some more opportunity, that there was symmetry between positions, and I took over college counseling. And then, as recently as this year, we moved into the development space, where I now oversee the Office of Development. So I give you all of that because I think it's very relevant in how I view the value proposition of athletics in a school and what that is, because I've had the opportunity to work with so many groups of our population, whether that's students first and foremost, whether it's colleagues, whether it's outside coaches, parents, college coaches. I've just seen kind of this big picture of what everybody's working on. And inevitably, as I mentioned before, it's a busy time of year, and schools tend to become siloed places because we have so much going on and we're just in our lane, lots of time constraints. But the blessing I have received in overseeing all of those departments and engaging with that many people in my community, it really took me out of that silo and gave me an opportunity to say, how do you view education? What do you need in your department? And what makes you your best version of yourself within that department? I took all of that knowledge and then I've kind of morphed it into what I believe is a more holistic approach versus the traditional approach that you find very often in value propositions of athletics.
So it's actually the perfect segue. I'll just share really quickly um, about our audience. As you can see, you have this multifaceted role. A good number of folks in the audience also have multifaceted roles, and the majority work in administration. Oh, the poll's still going. Okay, so that I'll go back to our deck now. Here we go. So that tees us up very nicely because in your role as both associate head of school and varsity baseball head coach, you help you help students become, as you mentioned, college ready, career ready, life ready. Um, can you share sort of how athletics are typically positioned within a school's ecosystem? And then maybe we can talk about how it's different at Austin Prep.
Absolutely. And I think the poll is actually going to be very relevant to that. And I'll circle back to that in a moment. But very often, the convenient answer and the right answer of what athletics plays within a school community are the bullets you see here. Sports do build readiness. It's undeniable. Engagement drives results. Student athletes tend to be more engaged. They tend to have higher academics. Families value balance. They want to know that you are holistically shaping their child and it's not singularly information driven. It's supporting their message at home and helping them raise the young man or woman that they are trying to raise in their own home. And then athletics, it has a lot of attention on it. It's very outward facing. So your culture can very much be driven in a positive or negative way based on the way that you handle athletics. So again, lots of undeniable facts within those bullets of that's what athletics traditionally is. But to me, that's a very short-sighted approach to it because as we're talking about this, we're talking about student athletes, athletics. We're staying in one singular lane of your school community. And in my opinion, athletics should be very holistic. And we need to get away from what tends to be a traditional model.
Someone asked if we can raise the volume. Is there a way you can raise the volume on your side a little bit?
Yep.
Thank you so much for that question. So to your point, I think people often imagine a dichotomy between, what happens during the school day and then what happens after that last bell rings. So can you talk about that model and then your views on it?
Yes, and that was what I was referencing, was that traditional model that I think if we reflect collectively here for a moment and just envision ourselves at the dismissal bell, I think this right here will hold true for a lot of us. We're very often on one campus, but we are in fact two separate schools. One school is very academic driven, starts early morning and goes until midday. The next school begins at midday and goes late into the evening. I believe that's a flawed system and a flawed way of looking at that because it's not mission aligned. It's not holistic. It's not a school-wide community. So think about at that dismissal that I presented. The bell will ring and students begin to file out of the classrooms and head to their extracurriculars. Very often they begin to change into a completely different outfit. Is that a costume for the arts? Is that a uniform for those playing in a game? Is that just more casual clothes for a practice? While that's happening, you start to look in the parking lot and you see many faculty members are packing up and they're heading out to their cars to head home for the day. Non-student athletes or those not within extracurriculars are jumping into their parents' car to head home for the day. And then you have this second shift almost arriving to school. So as cars are pulling off, there's a new wave of cars pulling on. First and foremost, that's many outside coaches that are not full-time at your school. They're coming over to take over the role of teacher in whatever their discipline may be, whether it's arts or athletics. But more importantly, the parents are arriving for their in-person front row seat to what you are doing as educators. I would say we're all pretty blessed that the parents can arrive and sit in class with us as we go through lessons, but that is in fact what the coaches and many times the arts are doing. Parents are attending and sitting and watching watching practices. They're certainly at the games. They certainly have opinions about those games. So we have this shift of two totally different demographics in two totally different schools. And I think one of the most extreme examples of that, but I think it will resonate with everyone listening, a problem that happens at, let's say, 1:00. The staff, the teachers, maybe even the students, like, I need to speak to the principal. I need to speak to the head of school. If that exact same problem replicates itself at 5 p.m., very often it's, I need to see the athletic director. Where is the athletic director? So now not only do we have this shift of staff and these students taking on different roles, we now have a new leader within the school very often, at least perceptually, who the leader is.
Absolutely. And so you say we should reframe our thinking on this, and that athletics and academics are not just in the same family; they're actually siblings. So can you talk more about what that means to say that they're siblings?
Absolutely. And what I mean by that is this is going to start us on that march towards one school, not two schools functioning on one campus. So it is undeniable. Teammates are, in fact, your classmates. Your fields or courts are also just a different version of a classroom. Your coaches are teachers, both of which are educators at the end of the day. Your practice plan in athletics is our curriculum in academics. Practice is homework, and your games are tests. I think that that's a very easy comparative there, but then it can get more complex, as you'll see in the next slide.
Oh, forgive me.
No problem at all. So in this, I want you to just sit back and think about how similarly aligned team placement within athletics and academic leveling is on the educational side of this. So when you see a student is in a CP class, that's very often experientially and skill-wise comparable to a freshman team or a thirds team. Someone that has a bit more mastery of the subject matter, whether that's calculus or lacrosse, that's more of a junior varsity or an honors. And then finally, you have varsity and advanced placement, which certainly go hand in hand when it comes to time constraints and time management and the rigor of an advanced placement or a varsity sport. What is even more complex than this comparative is teachers they're trained for years to know exactly how to navigate this space. You can have an AP teacher in first block that goes into second block with CPs and immediately shifts the way that they are teaching subject matter and how they're interacting and meeting those students where they're at. Beyond just the leveling, we have students that have learning differences. And we have IEPs and we have extended time and we have language exceptions and extra help hours and peer tutoring. Is that present on your athletic side? Because that young man or woman that has a learning difference and has accommodations for that learning difference, is that being told to the coaches that are now becoming their teachers in the afternoon? Can we make them not just a better athlete, but have a more fulfilling experience as student athletes if we are once again qualified to meet them where they're at? And that's not an easy task. Many of our faculty, we're blessed, they make it look easy, but a lot of time and training goes into that. And I think that's where we now have to reflect on, do our coaches have that exact same training and onboarding?
Absolutely. So You alluded to this already, but there are some challenges, right, that arise when it comes to treating athletics and academics as siblings at the school level. Can you talk about some of those and your view?
Absolutely. So whether you are a 500 win coach or a master teacher, there is different qualifications to get those jobs. So when you look at the teacher side, they must get their undergraduate degree. In Massachusetts, they must move on and get their master's. Many move on to get their PhD and all the years of education that took to get to that point. They also have hours of observation where they need to watch a master teacher, learn from a master teacher, see the command of their classroom and how they execute teaching the subject matter. Once you see that, you have to come up with your own version of that, which then gets observed and gets critiqued by those same master teachers, department chairs, principals, heads of schools. Here in Massachusetts, to teach in the public school space, you have to pass the Massachusetts Teachers Exam, which is a 3-part exam, and you cannot be a full-time teacher until you pass those exams. Once you've passed those exams and you do get that full-time position, you have to spend 4 years in the classroom before you can even qualify for your professional license. From the moment you get your professional license until your retirement, we all know we're going to be in plenty of professional development opportunities and plenty of continued education requirements. Now let's flip it to school 2. What do we have for our coaches to be that level of master teacher? Often it's going to be you pass a query. Make sure you're safe to work with the kids. Well, very important, and it should be on there. The teachers have to pass the query as well, obviously. But to be a master teacher, anybody can pass the query and not be a master teacher. So then we say, what do they have? A background in sports. And I don't say that antagonistically. It's not in quotes to be antagonistic. It's to say we all define what that background is differently. So if you want to coach basketball, your resume may be talking about how you are a basketball player, most specifically at the freshman level, which again, we're going to comp to a CP class. So that freshman coach knows how to be a player. Do they know how to coach, instruct, and teach the game, teach the subject matter? Then beyond that, the master teacher, is that the right position for you? And are you mission aligned with the school? You can be a great technician, X's and O's, but do you understand how the students learn? Do you understand the mission of the school and how you want that subject matter to be delivered to the students? We have to reflect as schools and say, what are we doing to ensure coaches are master teachers and not just master coaches?
So that's the perfect segue to asking that question, right? How do we close that gap if there are analogs and rhymes between athletics and academics, but then there are also these gaps. What can we do to close those gaps?
Well, I'll speak specifically from an Austin Prep perspective, which is reflected in the slideshow. First and foremost, let's recruit and invest in teacher coaches. Some teachers don't have a background in athletics and they have a little bit of pause in getting involved in athletics because they weren't athletes. But the athletic space should not singularly be for people that are athletic or have a background in athletics. So let's recruit teachers and have them feel welcome in the athletic space. And if they don't have the qualifications, let's invest in them the same way we do as teachers. Beyond that, conduct interviews and onboarding by staff outside of athletics. Very often, and not maliciously, athletics is looking through their lens of what they want in a coach. That might be very different from what the history chair wants or the principal wants. So let's ensure when we're bringing these coaches in, these educators in, that they are surrounded by all of their colleagues and not just the silo that is athletics, which is probably viewing it through very similar lenses as the athletic director or assistant ADs. Provide professional development and continued education opportunities. I think very often we really fall short on that with coaches, and we don't keep them invested and have them take part in like an overall governing body or coaches association. We don't pay to send them to those symposiums. Offer coaches roundtables so we can learn from each other. At those coaches roundtables, let's have staff members there. So they may not be able to talk about X's and O's and writing practice plans and how to coach today's athlete, but they can speak to them as young men and women, as students, as how the school handles it. Let's get in the same room so we can see if there's crossover skills and information we can share to actually make both sides better. Because we're talking about teachers right now, later on in the presentation, when we talk about shifting the student athlete's mindset, there is endless benefits to the classroom and shifting the student athlete's mindset. And then the final thing is, I know in the past we have fallen short on that, so I would challenge everyone to really reflect and say, outside coaches, are you really taking the time to invite and involve those coaches into school-wide activities? And they can be classroom observations. Let the coaches see how their athletes behave in class and how they interact and where they sit and are they engaging. Teacher orientation. Have them come to teacher orientation and see how the school is training these qualified teachers into doing it that school's specific way. The coaches will reap a benefit from that. Invite them to lunch. It is an amazing thing when an outside coach comes and sits at lunch and you as an in-house staff member or faculty member see the kids light up when they see their coach walk in, or they run over to the table and you sit there as an administrator or faculty member saying, why aren't they running over my table every single day? But it's just see that and let the coaches see you and how they interact and give them a different lens of the overall student experience. Do we hold graduation tickets for coaches? I believe we should do that. Do the coaches go to the art performances? Because thus far we've talked singularly about the educators that are coaches and the educators that are teachers. Well, guess what? The choir coach is an educator. The band coach is an educator. The director of arts is an educator. So if we are all educators, we need to be in the same space, sharing ideas and having a general respect and appreciation for all the ways we're all individually contributing to their student success.
Absolutely. And so you've given some examples of how you integrate the concept of a unified purpose, across your various activities. How do you integrate that into your school's mission and your school's values?
Absolutely. So, if we're going to really focus on being one school that goes from early morning to late evening and having symmetry throughout that day and complementary relationships throughout that, the only way to have success is to know who you are. And I'm just going to tell you who Austin Prep is, and you have to answer this yourself of who is your school, who is your community. So at Austin Prep, our mission statement is to inspire hearts to unite, minds to inquire, and hands to serve. That mission statement, as previously mentioned, derives from our core values of truth, unity, and love. So hearts to unite, that's love. Hands to serve, unity. Minds to inquire, that's truth. So one thing we say here, and every staff member can tell you this, core values can't be something on your plate. They must be your plate. Everything your school community offers must be on that plate of whatever your core values are.
I love that reframing. And so you alluded to this earlier. We talked about what the unified mission and value set look like from a school's perspective. Now, what does it look like from a student's viewpoint? A student who goes through the school and then becomes a graduate.
Absolutely. So I believe, based on the investment we would have made in this point, the symmetry, the relationship building we would have made between the teachers and the coaches and the art coaches, we are now positioned as educators to pour all of that into our students. And if we pour that into our students in all areas of their life, in all experiences within our school community, I believe you will see these measurable outcomes of those student athletes. Self-aware. There's grading in the classroom, and there is team placement in athletics. Some days you're at the JV level. Some days you work really hard and you get to the varsity level. You're aware of who you are in that moment. Manage time well. I think athletes specifically are given a lot of credit for that, most often because coaches hold timeliness to a very high standard. But I don't think the time management is singularly in that space of, oh, you show up on time or you're early. Time management to me is more, what are you willing to sacrifice? So if you know you have a commitment academically or athletically early in the morning, are you sacrificing going to bed a little bit earlier? Are you missing that game on TV that you wanted to watch? Are you missing that hanging out time with friends? Are you missing staying up with your family? You sacrifice that time. If here at our school, we have games the day after prom. Our students really sacrifice. They go to prom and then they're not out all hours of the night because they have to get home, get to bed, sacrifice, and have that time management to be ready to perform the day after prom. Community minded and selfless. I think if you do this at a high level in the academic space, it's really hard to not come out of that community minded and selfless. One, you get a lot of support from the community, which hopefully you appreciate. And there's a selflessness because sometimes it's better to have the assist than to score the point. Sometimes you're a practice player that really pushes that starter to put them in a position to hit the game winning shot. No one will ever know what you did in practice, but you'll know what you did. And that will reinforce and give you pride in the selflessness that being an athlete can be. Excellent communicator. This is an important one. Student athletes really need to be excellent communicators. When it comes to timeliness, coach, I have to make up an exam and I'm not going to be at practice on time. I wanted you to know that. Teacher, we're away and we have a dismissal. I'm not going to be in class third block. Could I please get the homework or make up the assignment now? Being proactive versus reactive through being really good communicators. Resilient, that goes without being said. Athletics has a serious vulnerability that I don't think we always give as much credit as we should to. So an example of that would be if you unfortunately have a bad day and you don't get the grade in class on the test that you took, it's probably going to be the teacher. Let's say it's old fashioned, get the paper back. The teacher's going to hand you that test back. You're going to look it up. C. I got a C. If you have that same performance at the varsity level, all your friends are sitting in the stands to watch you fail, to watch you come up short of the win, to have a bad game. All of those things, it's very outward facing. In a classroom, if maybe the class wasn't prepared for the subject, the whole class gets a grade below what they're capable of. The class knows that, the teacher will address it, we'll move on. If a team does that, it's in the local papers for everyone to know you had a bad day. So you're going to, by going through that vulnerability, student athletes specifically build up a huge resiliency in them because they know I can't be defined by one moment. I need to be defined by what I do on the macro level. Confidence through experience goes without being said, right? I'm a big believer you can't have confidence until you have experience and you have success. Athletes, it's very clearly defined. Did you win? Did you lose? Did you make varsity? Did you not? Did you qualify for state? Did you not? Did you win the state championship? Based on what your bar is, you are sitting there saying, I either did it and I didn't, and I'm going to gain confidence in either direction of that. To be a good winner, you also must be a good loser. And the last one is a fair self-advocate. Fair is a key word in that. And that's something we have a policy here at Austin Prep. If a student athlete is unhappy with something, they need to initiate that first conversation with a coach. You need to walk in as a teenager and talk to an adult and tell that adult, I think you're making the wrong decision. Well, you better be able to articulate that and have fact-based of why you believe that. You then must have the humility to hear their perspective of it. And they may have a point that works against you, and you have to say, how do I respond to that? Is that going to crush me, or is that going to motivate me? Am I going to be humble enough to say, you know what, coach, I didn't think of it from that perspective, but you're right. I need to improve this area of my game to get what I actually want. So again, those are, if we accomplish that as educators, those are pretty impressive 18 and 19-year-olds walking across our graduation stage, heading out into the real world.
Absolutely. And so that point you made about successes and failures being public, it's so striking that difference there with athletics. And so presumably a student doesn't, those qualities that you just enumerated are taught over a period of time, right? It's not something that you kind of learn on day one. It's something that you have to learn and relearn, that being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and gaining comfort with that. So when you think about your own experience and your own students, how does the student's role and perspective shift over the course of their high school experience?
Yes. So the example I'll give here is the evolution of a great teammate. That is a presentation in a document that we provide here at Austin Prep singularly in the baseball space. Because much like the classroom, you're going to have different ways. Each teacher is going to have a different approach, different standard of how they're teaching the subject matter. In the baseball space, we believe to get those measurable outcomes that we just said in the profile of a graduate, it all begins and ends on this. So as a freshman walks into Austin Prep, they sit through a presentation. This is obviously a Cliff Notes version of that, but it boils down to freshmen, you are in a very intrusive world, and especially the student athletes, social media, outside organizations that cover them, reputations, ranks within their sports, ranks within their states. People know who they are. There's a lot of attention on them. There's a lot of noise is what we term it within the baseball space at Austin Prep. So we're going to sit there and say to you as a freshman, you're on a learning tour. You shouldn't have any of that confidence because you haven't had those experiences. So in your best interest, it should be 1 year of just listening and not speaking and not trying to position yourself. And again, this is a baseball document. So we have a lot of young men that walk in and they're trying to like stand out amongst the older teenage guys and jockey as who they are in this ecosystem. It's like, let's be selfless enough to say, hey, there's a lot I need to learn. I just got here. I know you're an accomplished player. You know I'm an accomplished player, but that doesn't matter right now. What I want to prove to you right now is I'm a good teammate and a good person. And the way you do that is the humility of listening to others, the humility of in baseball, our freshmen carry the equipment. They set up the field because it's a tip of the cap to those that came before them because everyone did it in that freshman year. So the freshman year can be a very difficult year because you're overwhelmed with all new knowledge. You probably feel the least leadership you've ever had in your life. You feel like you're the smallest fish in the smallest pond. It's just a lot to absorb and a lot to experience. But you get to the end of it and you build confidence through experience, as we said before. Now your role evolves, but you are still an underclassman. So in the building of a leader, we're going to say, hey, leadership is really going to fall in the upperclassmen, not just for what they do in athletics, but think about what they're doing in life. By the time you're junior and senior, you've got your license. You've taken the SAT. You've gone to prom. Some of these big life moments, you're experiencing that. As a freshman, sophomore, you don't have those big experiences yet. You're not really self-aware yet. So you're still being shaped. However, as a sophomore, you have 1 year's experience. So let's give that back to someone immediately. Let's be compassionate towards those freshmen and what they're going through in that freshman year. But you do have experience to share with them. So let's mentor them. Let's have this be like a one-on-one, put someone under your wing. Hey man, I was just you. 6 months ago, I was you. How can I help? Oh, you don't know where we issue uniforms? Let me take you there. Oh, you don't know what we do on a dismissal where we go for lunch? I'll take you to the dining hall. I'll show you where you pick up your food. So many of those little experiences, you have the experience to share that. So through your mentoring of the freshmen, this is the first time you should be learning about who you are as a leader. Now we evolve up to junior. You're an upperclassman. You should be a leader, and you have responsibility in both directions. You have the responsibility to mentor and lead the underclassmen, but you once again have to be selfless enough to say, I'm the apprentice in terms of leadership here. It's not just for my betterment, but out of my loyalty to my teammate to be your most experienced version of yourself in the best position to be a leader. I'm going to give you everything as a senior so you can have those experiences and know who you are and what you did well and what you did poorly. I'm not going to be a yes man in that situation. I'm a junior. I have experiences. I might have a huge role. I might be the best player on the team. So I'm going to talk to those seniors behind closed doors, tell them my opinion, even if it differs with them. We're going to have a constructive, responsible conversation as the upperclassmen. And then when the final decision point comes, I'm going to defer to the seniors. I've pled my case, I've articulated my beliefs, but I honor that you are in the senior leadership position. So now what I have to do, if we're really going to be impressive young men and women, I'm going to walk out of that room and support that message as if it's my own. I'm not going to run into the shadows if it doesn't work and say, well, I told them they should have done this. We have to support that message and do everything we can in our control to ensure that that decision is a successful one. Because in a team setting, my success is your success and your failures are my failures. We're sharing in everything we do here. And then you get to the final stage where you're a senior. You have the most experience in the room. You're going through the college application process. You're getting accepted. Unfortunately, you may get denied. You have a lot of life experience. You've been through the good and the bad. The resiliency is there. You must give back. And part of doing that is you reflect on the entire process you've just gone through. Who were the leaders freshman year? What did they do that resonated with me? What did they do that missed the mark? And so on and so forth. As you collect all that information and how you absorb that, you now try to be the first version of a true leader in your life. And you lead that program for their betterment, not to just say you're the leader. If you want to be captain to have it on your college application, you are in the wrong position for leadership. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be a leader if it's to be a bullet point. You should lead by being giving back. And that's why the final quote here at the bottom, to be a great leader, you must be a great follower. This pathway that we create within the baseball space at Austin Prep is saying follow for 2 years, take on some leadership, and now when you're your senior year, you know how to be a great follower. You know the position that all the people you're responsible are in, and you're going to be dedicated to making them the best version of themselves, and collectively, this is the best holistic experience for the team.
And I love that so much. And one of the things that you've talked about is how athletics are connected to every aspect of the school, community, and operations. And when you think about this journey of a student athlete, right, progressing into those positions of responsible, selfless, self-aware leadership that you just described, it sounds, there are a lot of ways in which you can imagine athletic behaviors shaping academic behaviors, and then vice versa. Can you kind of talk about what this looks like on the ground, share some examples?
Absolutely. And so this comes back to the premise of the presentation, right? Athletics, which if you look back on the slides, I have either italicized or put in quotes as what is the value proposition of athletics in your school community. If we are singularly focused on athletics in student athletes in school 2 of the 1-2 school model, then we're only serving a small population within our school community. Because it's not singularly just the student athlete versus non-student athlete. It's the parents of those students. It's the siblings of those students, the friends, the family. It's if we are focused on all of these outcomes being on our student athletes, we've done a major disservice to a huge population within our community. And now we come back to Austin Prep. What is our mission? Truth, unity, and love. So if we're singularly servicing one segment of our population, that is in direct contrast to who we are saying we are within our mission statement. So how do we do that here at Austin Prep? We're blessed with a successful athletic program. Our baseball team has had some tremendous success over the years. 2 undefeated seasons, state champions, nationally ranked, 23 active players in college baseball last year. Every measurable success you can have in the sport, we've been blessed to have accomplished. With that comes a lot of outside attention, national attention. So if we sit there and say, well, the varsity team won a state championship, what is it, those 20 to 30 players on the varsity roster, depending on what you roster? Well, your student population, your enrollment is much larger than 20 to 30 kids. So if we're going to have the spotlight, which sometimes is fair and sometimes unfair, quite frankly, when you talk about the intrusiveness of outside organizations, treating high school baseball as if it's professional baseball, or high school sports as if it's professional sports in the past, sure, then how do we share that spotlight? Because we're not turning it off. It's not going away. So what we did at Austin Prep was we introduced baseball operations. Outside of Austin Prep, I'm very blessed to coach at USA Baseball in Cary, North Carolina. That has taken me around the world competing for gold medals. It's an amazing organization. And what I really grew an appreciation for down there was they focus on a model that every single person there is supposed to be the absolute premier person within their industry. So your athletic trainer should be considered the best athletic trainer in the country. Your sports information director should be one of the best sports information directors in the country. The athletes, it speaks for themselves. They're Team USA. The coaches, I think that speaks for itself as well. You are considered well beyond the top 1%ers, but there is equal value on every single one of those groups within the collective community. So I just took that model back to Austin Prep because I was like, this is a way I can share the spotlight with kids that might not even play baseball. So we started baseball operations 8 years ago, and it has had endless benefits of what it has done for our student body. One of the things I'm most proud of baseball operations is in those years, only 1 year was the leader of this 20 to 30 person group, a young man. So we have over 100 baseball players in our program. So you have a young woman who is the lead in baseball operations, telling these 100 teenage boys exactly where they need to be, what they need to do, what they need to fill out, what questions they need to answer. They are just on par as a coach, to the point we took one of our coaching stipends and passed it along to a teacher, Miss Flaherty, to head up baseball operations. We felt it was that valuable within our program that we gave up an on-field coach to have a coach of that side of our baseball program. So what does baseball operations house? We have young men and women from grades 6 through 12. Some have academic interest, particularly mathematics. We put them in the analytics department. They break down stats, they break down film, they provide that to our players. They run our testing day and gather all the measurables of our student athletes. We have some that want to be coaches someday, and they serve as an on-field apprentice, an internship as a coach. We have others that handle hospitality. They schedule the hotels, they schedule the to-go meals. When we compete in a large region, we could be 4 or 5 hours away from campus. At the end of the game, food's waiting for us because baseball operations has that prepared for our athletes. We have photographers. They handle all of our social media. They write for us. And as recently as yesterday, sports operation had 2 sophomores published in the newspaper for writing an article on one of our hockey games, and the photographer's photo being photo credited for that. Those are sophomores in high school that are published writers in a newspaper. So we took the attention that athletics gets and put it in a position that others can reap that benefit. You don't have to play baseball. You don't have to have an athletic bone in your body. You can have transferable skills that make us better. It's not us just providing you something. You make us better through your own individual talents, abilities, and interests. And full disclosure, we've had 7 of our baseball operations members move on to do baseball operations at the Division I level.
Wow.
So they didn't even realize they had this. Now they're collegiate Division I baseball operations members. It's an amazing program.
That's incredible.
Off field, we want to be present with the arts, because we make sure our athletes are selfless and humble enough to say, you may not be able to hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, but I can't sing a solo in front of the entire school. I can't dance in front of the entire school. So you have an unbelievable skill set. You may appreciate my skill set, but let's be the mutual admiration society. And what happens here, we're a Catholic school, the Nutcracker is a very, very important tradition here at Austin Prep. And what's fun about it is run in a manner in which we have world-ranked dancers here, literally world-ranked dancers that perform in this. But we also have baseball players that have never danced in their life, and other student athletes that take part in the Nutcracker, and it's written in a manner that they can have a role, though they have no measurable ability in the arts. For the players like me that would panic to get on stage, they serve as ushers for that. So when you walk into a Nutcracker performance, every single door you walk through is going to be manned by a young man in a sports coat and a tie, and he's going to be one of our baseball players. He'll help you to your car. He'll help you to your seats. And we're saying to the artists, those world-ranked dancers, singers, musicians, we're saying, we know this is your Super Bowl, and we know we're not going to really contribute much to it, but we're going to support it the same way you support us day in and day out. because we do have that mutual admiration for your skill set, and hopefully you appreciate what we have. So now we've talked about sharing our baseball space, sharing an extracurricular space, but now we move into service hours. And in baseball, we do a community day the week of Thanksgiving every single week. And what we do on community day is give back to our entire community. So we go to all departments, we go to faculty members. What do you need? Do you need your classroom rearranged? We have tons of horsepower. Do you need us to move things, lift things? What do you need from us? We winterize our space. We're in the Northeast, so we have to prepare for the snow. So we put away all of our equipment. We help the facilities department with any needs they have. And it's another way of the Mutual Admiration Society. It's our athletes who, thank God, they're very blessed and celebrated. But I want those guys to sit there and say to our facilities department, I appreciate you and the skills and what you provide us year round. The least I can do is give you one day on Thanksgiving week to show my thanks versus to just say my thanks. And the final quote there at the bottom, I will address that one, is now you shift your community, you shift the mindset to how you do anything is how you do everything. You can't just be selfless in your sport. You can't just be humble in your sport. You need to be that young man or woman or that teacher or that coach in all areas of our school-wide community.
It's really that the exemplification, right, of the one school approach. So now this is where the rubber meets the road. Can you talk about how you communicate Austin Prep's value proposition, particularly with respect to the role of athletics? Because you've just shared all the different ways in which your approach to athletics um, has a positive impact on the entire school community, regardless of whether folks are athletes or non-athletes. How do you communicate that value prop?
So there is the communication of it, but to me, I would rather always lead through example and action. So I love this first sentence here. The classroom and athletics are two halves of the same promise to help students become their best selves. And now as I referenced before, athletes, student athletes, athletics, that word is now melted away and it is replaced by students and ultimately at the end of that, graduates. So when in a private school, when you're trying to have someone enroll in your school or at a public school, ensuring they stay in your community, now you're sitting there saying, well, athletics is part of our school, our one school, and you've seen all the newspaper articles, you've heard about the championships, but do you know you can take part of that even if you don't want to be an athlete? You can share in that spotlight. You can play a huge role. And it's not just, some schools try to do it through team managers, but unfortunately, a lot of times team managers become glorified ball girls or ball boys, and they don't really have a fulfilling role. We've honored that you have a huge role that you can play within athletics. And even if you don't want to be in that space and you want to be in the choir, you want to be in theater, you're going to have supporters in the athletic space coming there to not only complement what you're doing, but to be present and to appreciate what you bring to the school community. If we're accomplishing that through action instead of words, every single person that steps across your campus in deciding if you are the right school for them says, the entire option is here for my child, despite their interest. They're going to melt these lines. They're going to eliminate these silos. So I've heard about this really great hockey team they have. My son or daughter doesn't play hockey, but I know the way that this school operates, the value proposition is that they can be part of that program despite the ability to not even know how to skate.
That's incredible.
Thank
Thank you so much. So we're going to take a few minutes to take your questions. Please add them to the Q&A. I don't know if you want to say anything in closing before we get to the Q&A.
Yes, again, I just want to thank everybody that took the time out of their busy schedule, again, specifically at this time of the year, to be here and to hear my perspective on the value proposition that athletics can be within your school community. And I really hope something from today's presentation is something you can take back to your campus and hopefully improve your student experience just maybe one tick higher than it already is.
I expect probably more than that. So I'm going to put our contact info up on the screen, so you can reach out to us if you have any additional thoughts or questions, and we'll continue to take questions here as any come in. Uh, I know I have at least one, and I also wanted to note I launched a poll. One final poll. We love your input, so look out for that. It should be in the upper right corner of your screen. Okay. And here is a question for you, JP. So, how do you personally carry your brand or approach of coaching on the baseball field over into the academic and school setting?
Yes. So in one of the slides, we had that how you do anything is how you do everything. And so here at Austin Prep, we have merits and we have demerits. So a merit would be maybe you hold a door for somebody and the teacher recognizes that and they write it up and they put it into your portal and your parents get a notification. Johnny or Susie was very selfless today, kind-hearted, and I want to thank them for assisting clean up the dining hall, holding the door, whatever that may be. Transversely, there are demerits, and demerits could be as simple as you have the wrong shoes on, you forgot your tie, you were late to class, you took your phone out, or as serious as cheating on a test. And the policy we have here within the baseball program is if you were to get a demerit as a baseball player, you need to find me before I find you. And that's not meant to sound threatening. It's just meant to create a sense of urgency. And that sense of urgency is to have the student athletes function in a space of something has gone wrong. I'm immediately going to address it and I'm going to go speak face to face with someone. So they'll walk into my office and the first question is, please tell me your side of the story. I've read your demerit. What's going on? I think it's counterculture if they walk in to immediately assume that those students are wrong and say, I saw your demerit. What were you thinking? That's counterculture, and they're not going to want to come talk to you, and they're not going to get it. They're not going to absorb that as a learning moment. They're going to learn that as a discipline moment, and they're not going to be as engaged. So a student comes in, they tell me what happened. 95% of the time, they take ownership that that's something they could have done better, and they did have a misstep. And I say, well, how are we going to proceed with this? 95% the first time they come in say, well, I'll never have it happen again, coach. I say, that's not good enough. What are we going to, let's have some action items to shift this, to change this, to have this be more reflective of who you are. Mm-hmm. And what I then ask them to do is to send an email to the teacher. Could I come meet with you to just discuss? I deserve this. I'm going to serve my detention, but I just wanted to talk to you about how I really have processed and understand how wrong I was, and I'd like to apologize face to face in person. At the conclusion of that meeting, they send a follow-up thank you to the teacher, which they copy me on so I can ensure that they close the loop in a timely manner. And that is that whole how you do anything is how you do everything. And as I referenced in my presentation, the shift that you can have in the classroom, many times in those conversations about the demerits, I'll say, so you took your phone out in class? Yeah, I did. Would you do that at practice? No, never, coach. Well, why not? Well, we're working on something and you have the practice plan written and we were doing ground balls. Like I would never do that. Well, guess what? The teacher had a lesson plan for that day. They were instructing you. They were preparing you for the test, which is how I'm preparing you for the game. Why would you change who you are from a student athlete to a singular student? That's a good point, coach. Like I would never do that. Why did I do that? Well, because you're thinking in terms of two schools. The second student at second school is far more disciplined and far more attention to detail. Well, how you do anything is how you do everything. You need to take the way you conduct yourself on our field, which I'm just teaching you baseball. I need you to take that into the classroom and apply it to geometry.
I love that so much that there's really a reciprocity. It's that both sides make each other better. We might not have time for all three, but we're going to try. We have 6 minutes and 3 questions, so 3 more. So what adult staff members help to support the quote off-field students that contribute to your program?
So as I mentioned in the presentation, one of our English teachers, this is a really great story. I hope this inspires you guys. We gave up a stipend position on the baseball program to support a stipend to go to that teacher to implement the things we had worked out in baseball operations through the inspiration of USA Baseball. I also had referenced the two young women that had written an article that was published in hockey. Well, they have now come out of the sports operation class. So what started as baseball operations evolved into a student club of sports operations, which this semester that we are currently in is the first time we are ever offering it as an elective for those that want to go study sport management in the future. So now we have baseball operations, sports operations club, and it's being taught by that English teacher as an elective of sports operations.
That's awesome. So are most of your, I have a lot of questions too, but I'm trying to prioritize audience questions here. Okay. Are most of your coaches teachers at your school? Because you had mentioned folks, coming in as outside coaches. So this person asks, are most of your coaches teachers at your school?
Yes, we put a tremendous priority on that, but we were not that. That has been a shift over time, and at this time, predominantly most of our varsity head coaches are full time at the school, but we're a small Catholic school, so we don't really have the robust staff to fill all of those positions of head coaches, sub varsity coaches, assistant coaches. So we do still have many, many outside coaches that arrive midday to start to teach our students.
Um, Thanks. And what advice can you share with our school who is seeking to better advertise our athletics? As a Waldorf school, it is not the first thing people associate with our school, both to prospective families and current students. So, what advice can you share with a school that is not the first one that people would associate with athletics necessarily, to better advertise athletics to prospective and current students?
Absolutely. So I think it again kind of follows how this presentation has gone. If we have any areas that we want to improve or change, first let's get that house in order, right? And it starts at the top in leadership. So let's try to figure out where the gaps are and try to put ourselves in a position that we get better leadership there. And then we begin to take the basketball program, the baseball program, they then begin to have a symmetry together. Then baseball and basketball has a symmetry with the arts. And now all of a sudden, all the student athletes are performing at a different level in the academic space. And now it's welcome to both sides. So the answer is within your own community, whatever it is you're known for, leverage that strength into the other areas and don't let it continue to live in a singular space. So again, we did that. We're in our podcast studio right now. This is a student run podcast that's here. They have taken that skill set of producing a podcast and shared it with athletics. That gave us the sounding board and the way to tell our message of our athletics program. And again, unfortunately, just not knowing enough about your school, that would be just self-assess and say, what is something we're doing really well right now, and how can we create that symmetry between all programs and have them function in a complementary nature?
That's so wonderful. And I think we're just about at time. So if folks have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us. So grateful that you all joined today and it was such a wonderful and engaged discussion. Thank you so much. And JP, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. This was such an inspiring conversation. And I know it's such a busy time of year for you. So thank you for taking the time to share your insights with all of us.
No problem at all. It's my pleasure. I appreciate you giving me the time to be with you in Niche today, and certainly to spend time with my colleagues. It's an amazing space, this education space we're in. It's a demanding space, but to be able to rely on each other and share ideas and make each other better, I thank you for the opportunity to be with all of you today and everything you've contributed to my experience today.
Thank you so much.